Okay, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. Let's take a moment to imagine an organization where a cross-functional, business-minded team is delivering a working piece of software. Now imagine that all the activities and effort in doing so flow uninterruptedly between all the parties involved. And imagine that the value delivered is understood, it's measured, and it's reported transparently. Now, wouldn't that just be wonderful? But how do we achieve this? In fact, quite a few startups have achieved this blend of technology and business on one side and market and its customers on the other side. And people often ask, what is it that we need to do to achieve this level of information technology excellence? Do we use Scrum or do we use DevOps? But can we do both? Does it have to be a choice? Can we do both Scrum and DevOps? I'm Durmišević and I work as program manager in Authority Partners. And today I'm here with my colleague Mustafa, Toroman, program architect also in Authority Partners. And we're here to talk about how to use Scrum and DevOps together. In Authority Partners, we're actually examining how to combine elements of both into one to achieve this level of information technology excellence. Now, thank you to all our sponsors, without whom we wouldn't be here today. A few words about myself. I hold a master's degree in Management, Information Systems and Innovation from London School of Economics. I'm certified information system auditor. In my previous life, I was an IT auditor in PwC. And I'm a professional Scrum Master and product holder.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Anna. My name is Mustafa Toroman. I work as a program architect and lead system engineer with Authority Partners as well. I've been Microsoft MVP for Microsoft Azure for the last 5 years. I'm also very certified in Microsoft technologies. I'm Microsoft Certified Solution Expert in 7 different areas, Microsoft Certified Solution Developer, Microsoft Certified Trainer for many years.
And I'm going to stop you right there because it's going to take us days to go through all of his certifications and achievements.
Probably.
Right, so let me walk you through today's agenda. So first we're going to talk about what Scrum and DevOps are in a nutshell. We're then going to dive into the underlying principles behind DevOps. We will look into the DevOps lifecycle from planning to monitoring. We will discuss what is it that you can do to apply this to your organization. And then finally we'll share a few concluding remarks. So let's first remind ourselves what Scrum is about. So Scrum is just a simple framework that resides on values and principles. And we use a simple framework to govern complex software development. But Scrum is not a prescriptive methodology. It doesn't tell you what you need to do, it doesn't tell you how you do it, and it certainly doesn't tell you what your process should look like. What it does instead is sort of gives you minimum requirements that you need to have to apply to your organization. On the other hand, DevOps brings in the system thinking. So it views the entire value stream as a whole rather than looking into separate phases. So it's concerned about how work gets into development and how it gets delivered to the customer. So this value stream is about processing of the customer request into the tangible output. DevOps also introduces an important concept of lean thinking, which is about removal of the waste. So anything in our value stream that doesn't add to the value of the product needs to be eliminated and removed. So I'll name a few examples of waste: technical debt, defects, wait time, etc. So knowing that Scrum sort of provides minimum requirements and that's a framework that it can be combined with different techniques, different methodologies can be put into Scrum. With this notion, it's not unusual to combine it with DevOps because these principles behind DevOps, the system thinking, mapping of the value stream, lean thinking, they actually work really well with Scrum, because Scrum is also about lean thinking. So with this premise in mind, it's not unusual to combine the two together. But why have we actually chosen to combine DevOps with Scrum instead of something else? I'll let Mustafa explain in the next section.
Okay, so DevOps actually is there to address multiple issues. One of them is to address issue of so-called wall of confusion. That is basically a wall between dev and ops in the traditional IT environment. So what happens in traditional IT environments where DevOps practice is not introduced yet is that developers and operations are rarely friends. So we have a situation where developers will create code, they will work on delivering software, and once they're done, they're actually going to just throw that code over the wall, this wall of confusion, and ops end up with deploying and maintaining that code for the time to come. Now, the issue in this situation is that there's almost no communication between development and operations. What happens in those kind of situations that when issue occurs, no one is actually addressing the issue. On the other hand, the blame game goes on. So basically, when something breaks in our production environment, operations will always say, it's new code that's being deployed, we have nothing to do with that, our servers have been working for last few years without any kind of issues, now we have new code in production, so it's definitely a go. On the other hand, developers will say, no, our code is working, we tested it in our environment, we have been working on it, QA approved it, everything should be fine, it's something on your server's configuration, is a mismatch or something's going on that side. And what happens in those situations is that blame game goes on and on, each side is trying to actually prove that they are the right one, that they don't have an issue, it's always someone else. It's hard to admit that we have a mistake. And as a product of that situation, end customer is suffering. They don't have software that they need to use. What DevOps tries to do is introduce cross-functional teams that work together. So basically, in IT environment that introduces the DevOps process, we will have cross-functional teams where development and operations will work together from the beginning of the process. So development will know what kind of servers this will actually run on in the production. They will know the security or system requirements that are needed. On the other hand, operation can be involved in the design of the software, make some kind of suggestions on what needs to be done so it can run properly in production. Or basically, teams can communicate through whole process to deliver the best possible solution. And in this kind of situation, we have a collective thinking, and it's never someone else's fault. We have a team that needs to work together, and when product fails, we actually have a team who supports the software.
Right, so to really understand how the two fit together, it's important to unpackage these DevOps three ways. The first way being about optimization of the flow, the second way about amplifying feedback, and the third way about experimentation and learning. So let's see what each one of these bring. So DevOps' first way is concerned about moving and processing customer requests as fast as possible from left to the right. So we want to move through this value stream as fast as possible. And we are concerned about every single PBI from the moment it had gotten us from the client until it's out there in production. Now you may think that this is contrary to Scrum, because in Scrum we are committing to a sprint goal, and we are releasing at the end of the iteration after sprint review. If you have that reasoning, that's absolutely fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but a great Scrum team will move away from this perception and will adopt a flow-based model. And what does that mean for the release cycle? It means that although in Scrum we are releasing at the end of the iteration after sprint review, that's just a minimum. There isn't actually anything stopping you from doing that multiple times during the sprint or even multiple times during the day. And a Scrum team that does that has gone above and beyond minimum requirements prescribed by Scrum. And there are some real-life examples that we'd like to share with you on what does that look like in today's world.
Okay, so before we discuss how we deliver software today, I would like to say how we did it in the past. So, is anyone here in IT industry longer than 20 years? Some? Okay. So, I was there as long enough to remember when we deliver software in the floppy disks, or where delivering an update to a client was actually to copy it on the USB drive and actually drive to the client's location to copy the new code. And things drastically changed over the years. Market shifted tremendously compared to that. What we did in the past was that we developed software for a long period of time, then we would sell it as a packaged software where clients would make certain investment in that software. They would buy licenses for next couple of years to use until we release new version of the software or so on. Best example, let's take example for, let's say, Microsoft Office. What we had in the past was like, it was delivered every 5 years, then every 3 years, then every 2 years, and so on. The cycle of delivering that software was constantly spinning out. Today, we no longer use packaged software. We rarely use packaged software. What's introduced in the market today was software as a service model where we buy subscription for a certain software. So there's no pre-investment in software. We pay month by month until we want to use it. So the moment we decide we're not going to use that software, we just stop paying subscription, and that's about it. In an environment like that, we simply cannot afford ourselves to invest months or even years to develop new things. The market shifts so fast that we cannot afford to bet what's going to be good for our product in the next couple of years. Whatever is the niche market you're targeting, whatever your audience is for your software, there's probably very good chance that you have a competition. Someone is delivering similar software. And in these sort of circumstances where we have a subscription-based licensing, if we don't have features that our competition has, clients are going to leave. We don't have that comfort to plan software, what we're going to do over the next couple of years, and deliver that in 2 years. If our competition delivers something new, we have to be on the market tomorrow. We don't have the ability to postpone that kind of release for time to come, because at the end of the month, where our client subscription runs off, if they're not going to keep using our software, they're going to switch to a competition because they have better features. So we need to keep up with the market and give delivery as fast as possible. If you look at this chart, we can see some of the market leaders today, and Amazon absolutely leads with 23,000 deployments per day. They are deploying to production 23,000 times per day. Google follows with 5,500 per day, Netflix 500 per day, and so on. And basically, everyone today is a software company. Even if you look at those companies that are leading, for example, Amazon and Netflix, their primary focus is not software delivery, but they are delivering their services to the software. Same can be said about Uber and a lot of other companies. Everyone today became a software company. No matter what the market you're in, you need to have at least a good mobile app, a good web page, and so on.
Right, so besides the release cycle that obviously changes with your Scrum team adopting DevOps, there are several other things that change. First off, the composition of the team. To be able to move now as fast as possible through that value stream that we saw you need to bring in different people together. So you're bringing the team is no longer just limited to dev team, but it consists of business analysts, UX, UI designers, people from operation, etc. So all these work together as a coherent unit with a single goal of delivering value to the customer. Now, what else changes? It changes that the Scrum team's definition of done when they are adopting DevOps will be more ambitious compared to a team that doesn't. And that's simply because their goal and definition of done is to release to production. And DevOps brings some important and useful concepts that help you move through this value stream faster, and those are automating test cases, continuous and automated deployments, and also architecting for application that is low risk in terms of release with the use of microservice. Now, the second way is about amplifying feedback. But we are now concerned about having as many feedback loops, but from right to the left. Now again, you may ask yourself why this is any different to a pure Scrum team where you have many events that help you collect and get the feedback. It is different simply because the Scrum team adopting DevOps would have, at the time of the sprint review, their product would have already been in production. So they can actually have a holistic view of the product out there in the market and then make an informed decisions of the actions to follow. Unlike in a Scrum team that doesn't adopt DevOps, where only after the sprint review you will be shipping something into production. And finally, the third way is about creating and nurturing a culture of experimentation and learning. Now, Scrum is all about experimentation and learning, but with the introduction of DevOps, it gets the whole new level to it, an element around it. It's very important that we are creating a culture that is free of any politics, silos, and where these different roles are coming together with the collective ownership of things that they're doing. And only when you create such culture that is free of politics and blameless and built on trust, people are willing to collaborate with one another, and they're willing to actually work together to resolve the issues instead of just throwing the work over the fence. So we're losing that problem where that's not my issues, the QA guys who didn't do it, etc. So with the creation of this climate and environment, you are facilitating this collaborative ownership, and you are allowing them people to experiment and learn from it. There's another misconception about Scrum as such, and that is that the retrospective only happens at the end of the sprint. It does, but at minimum. There isn't anything that's stopping you and your Scrum team to have as many on-demand retrospectives throughout the sprint, as many times as you like, for the sake of experimentation and learning. Now, to see how all this fits together and how a Scrum team adopting DevOps lives out there, we need to review the life cycle.
If you look at the DevOps life cycle, on the first look, it doesn't look much different than the regular Scrum. We would plan, then we would develop and test our features. At the end of iteration, we would do a release into production. Then based on that, we would monitor and learn. Then start the cycle again by planning, again developing and testing, releasing the production at the end of the next iteration, and so on and so on. In the DevOps, the point is to actually spin the circle to go as fast as possible. We're not waiting for the end of the iteration anymore to do a release, but we're going to deploy into production as soon as we develop and test our features. So that's not a stopper anymore. It's not deployment once per sprint at the end of the iteration. It's as soon as it's finished. For example, if we have a simple change, like we need to move a button from the page from one side to another. It's like 3 minutes work. It's going to be done relatively quickly. Why would we wait for that deployment for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever your sprint length is? So in the DevOps life cycle, we're going to do fast cycles as soon as possible. So what we're going to do, we're still going to plan. We're going to plan at the beginning of the sprint what we want to deliver. But as soon as we develop and test each of the features, anything that's deliverable, we're automatically going to do a release. We're going to do a release into production environment where we're going to monitor and learn. And based on all the metrics that we're going to collect, we're going to, again, start planning. And again, the plan is not only at the beginning of the sprint, but through the entire sprint, we're going to do planning based on the changes we do in the cycle. And if you look at what Anna mentioned as a three-way, as a three-way, this actually fits perfectly together because we want to move from right to left as soon as possible. We want to deliver anything that's deliverable as soon as possible. We're going to give all new latest features to a client, to our end users as soon as possible. But based on that, we're increasing the feedback as well. Because as soon as we have something in the production, we're going to monitor and learn what happens to that feature, and we're going to increase the feedback getting us to us as soon as possible. And what I would like to mention here, that monitoring and learning is not just classical monitoring. We're not just monitoring anymore performance or availability of our applications. We are going to collect as much as possible metrics that we can. We're going to monitor how users use our application, what pages do they keep on, what features they are going to use. And that's going to give us more information about how we need to plan. If we deliver a certain amount of time to create a new feature and we figure out that actually no one is using it, we need to figure out, is it the best feature, and we need to stop working on that. It's not interesting to our clients, or is it just badly placed? It's hidden from our end users and they cannot find it. Monitoring and learning can give us much more information and things that is increased in this fast-growing life cycle.
Now, all of this is a lot easier said than done. And you might be questioning yourself, what does it take to apply any of these to your team or to your organization? Now, there definitely isn't one size fits all. There is no silver bullet to this. Different organizations may have absolutely the same approaches but come to different results. But there are some common things that you can apply to on your team level and organization level to help ease this road from Scrum team into Scrum team adopting DevOps. And we like to refer to it as DevOps evolution rather than transformation, because it's something that you would want to take step by step and progress slowly through the road rather than using a big bang approach. Now, definitely you want to start small. You want to start with a small project, a small, coherent, cross-functional team that shares the same values and has the same goal and vision. And when you put this cross-functional group of people together, you will immediately reduce the number of handovers that would otherwise increase the wait time, and that's the waste. And it would reduce the accountability and responsibility of the team over what you're delivering. For example, in our authority partners, when we've implemented a cross-functional team, we've actually immediately felt the relief from the reduced number of handovers. And we were able to identify issues at the very beginning of the process rather than having to wait until the end. You definitely want to automate as much as possible, but that's not just because you want to move fast through this life cycle, but it's also because you want to free your people to do things that really matter and do the things that add value to the product. We probably can't stress enough the importance of the culture that you have in the team and organization. It's only when this environment is built on trust and people know that they have each other's back that they're willing to experiment and they're willing to take risk and they're willing to do it again and again. And because this is all about collaborative ownership and effort, a group effort, you definitely want to be rewarding and recognizing teams and not singling out individuals. And it's very important that everyone in this value stream, regardless of their position, has the same understanding of what is it that we're doing, what the goal is, and where do we stand now in relation to where we want to be. And one way of doing it is by applying various dashboards that will be shared, a common dashboard that will be shared across the team with everyone, regardless of if you are a business analyst or a developer or a person from operations. You will all be looking into same common dashboard that is telling things about that is telling where you stand now in terms of the code quality, frequency of releases, utilization, budget, and whatever other indicator you want to collect. So one thing is certain is that this is not a technology project. It's a cultural change that requires involvement and support from everyone inside of the organization. Let's see what tools you can apply in your team to help you move along the way.
Okay, so as Anna mentioned, tools kind of fall in the second plan because it's mainly a cultural change and we need to focus on that. But still, we need tools to help us get the job done at the end of the day. And I'm not going to talk about any specific tools in this situation. I'm going to talk about tools that we need. My personal weapon of choice is definitely Azure DevOps that I'm really familiar with and I use for a long time, and I like it because I kind of have everything in one place and I don't have to switch between different tools. But we have a lot of tools in the market. I'm not saying that Azure DevOps is the best one. It can be any of those tools. We have literally hundreds of them in the market. What they have in common is that usually they play very well together, and that you can basically integrate any of them with anything. What we need in the start is definitely a code repository, basically something where code will be kept and something that will allow your team members to collaborate on the development. What you're going to need after that is some kind of CI/CD tools to build and deploy that code, and at the end, we're going to have a lot of tools to monitor what happens in the background. What is often forgotten and what everything needs to rely on is that complete team. Everyone needs to use the same set of tools. It's one of the part of the wall of confusion between dev and ops where they actually used to use completely different tools and that was actually creating a lot of problems. So we have to have a complete team working on similar tools or at least with the tools that can integrate with each other. What's also very important that based on those tools, we have to have a lot of common dashboards. We have to have some kind of KPIs and monitor basically everything, measure basically everything. And based on those dashboards and team using identical tools that share those dashboards, Scrum Master at any point during the sprint should be able to tell us where we are. What are we doing right now? What we delivered? What is the plan? Are we on track? And etc.
And should be able to do that actually without a single interaction and disruption from the team. Yeah. Now we've actually covered quite a lot of content here from Scrum perspective and DevOps perspective, but there are a few things that we would like you to take away with you today. And that is that Scrum is just a plain, simple framework. It's not something that we should be hiding behind, but we should be looking into how we can enhance it by applying more to it to polish this value of stream. We've chosen to examine DevOps, and I think what we saw today gives you an idea why DevOps fits really well with the Scrum, because it brings the collective ownership and looks at the whole picture rather than separate phases, and that's what we need today in order to be delivering value. So with this notion, it's definitely evident that you don't have to make a choice between applying Scrum or applying DevOps to your team. You can definitely do both, and you can add DevOps into your Scrum framework, where then all the activities from mapping of the value stream, lean thinking, and system thinking, all the activities that happen in this value stream are now happening in the time-boxed event of the sprint. The two work better together than by just using a Scrum, so definitely it's not a matter of choice, you can do both.
Yeah, I must add on that it's not that Scrum and DevOps are better together. You cannot do DevOps without Scrum. The point is to have a communication between teams, between team members, and increase that communication as much as possible. To have everyone involved in all the discussions, all the issues that you have, so everyone is on board and everyone up to date on what we are doing right now and how we're going to do it. It's very important to mention that this is primarily a cultural change. You need to change the people's mindset. And you have to have support throughout entire organization. If management is not on board and you're trying to implement DevOps in the engineering, it's going to fail. Management will require some old-fashioned KPIs. They will have certain goals that cannot be pushed through that. So if you don't have support throughout the entire company, from the top to the bottom, it will fail. It's also very hard to convince everyone that they need to be doing this. Especially, so I have an ops background, and it's really strange for people a lot of times that I push DevOps as someone with a system engineering core. It's kind of a people, especially in the ops, they push change away. They want stability. They don't want to change anything. On the other hand, you're probably going to run into developers saying, we don't need the ops, we can do this on our own, and so on. It's not, you have to change people's minds, and you have to have them work together. Creating cross-functional teams and bringing people together might be hard at first. You have to go step by step, but again, it's a cultural change that needs to go through the entire organization to actually succeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma, for letting me tag along.
Yeah.
Question? Do I need a mic or? Okay. No, I think it's good. So you were talking about the DevOps cycle, and I have one question because you're talking about release and production. Are you talking about really releasing, making it available, meaning to be used by the users, or are you talking about deployment in production?
Basically both. It's not really, we are not completing the deployment until it's really in the production and available to end users.
The reason I'm asking is because I'm not sure if I agree with actually making release every sprint, because I've always supported the concept of develop on cadence, release on demand. Meaning, I do all the cycle and I deploy it to production, meaning it's there. But actually, it's my customer who decides when I want to release. That was the reason of my questions. First, I'm not going to debate if it's
this again depends on the situation and environment you have. Sometimes, if you're working for a customer, it's like you have to obey what customer wants. So if you're not allowed to do deployment every time you finish the feature, you're probably not going to have to do it.
Deployment, 100% agree. But just because it's deployed in production, it doesn't mean that I have to start using it immediately.
Absolutely, that's correct as well.
Because then what I understood from the presentation is that you were mentioning not only I deploy in production, but it actually becomes available to actually start to use it by the final users in the production environment. To start
it's a final goal.
It's a final goal. Definitely it's a goal to have it out there in the market so that you can get the feedback as soon as possible on what you've done. But there are going to be some obvious constraints. It's different totally when you're developing an in-house product and you can then dictate how your release cycle will be, compared to when you're doing something for a client who may be very conservative in their, maybe operating in a very risky, conservative business, and they may have very old, I wouldn't say old-fashioned, but very protocol-based approach to releasing something to production. I'm sure that at this stage, many of them would not buy in this story of releasing to production immediately as soon as you're done. But yes, the goal, the definition of done, is ambitious in the sense that we want to release it out there in production and we want it to be used immediately so that we get feedback. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Another plus to this approach, where you release as soon as possible into the production, is, as you said, you can deliver a lot of things, but actually it will become available into production to the end user at a certain amount of time. And the client says, okay, release everything we have in there, release it now. Problem with this approach is that you're probably going to have a lot of code delivered in one go. When you have a bug in those kind of situations, it's going to probably take you a lot of time to actually track down what the issue is. In the traditional environment, in enterprise environment, delivery happens every 9 months. And when we have a couple of hundred people developing code for 9 months, you can imagine the amount of code that's delivered in the single year. Now, going through that code, because you're going to have bugs, they're going to happen. It's a utopia to think you're going to be completely bug-free. So you're going to have bugs, and to go through all that code, it could be tens of thousands of lines of code to actually figure out what the bug is going to take a lot of time. And with DevOps cycle releasing as soon as possible, you're going to do a small increment changes, and it's really going to help you track down the issues. It gives you option to roll back really easy, to track down the bug in a small piece of code and release it again.
Yes, but if you are developing the feature, like it depends what the feature is, if you're doing the button, then that's okay, let's say. But if you are like doing an in-house project for your product, so you want to do a marketing strategy towards whatever feature you're doing, you have to inform your potential user what that is, and maybe you want to have some marketing campaign, also maybe some additional documentation and maybe like engagement platform, engagement activity that will to follow up with your release. Again, deployment fine, but the release over the customer has additional steps that cannot be just figure out.
It really depends on how you structure your deployments and how you structure your release. It again depends on the product you're doing. It depends on your audience, on your customers. This is the ideal scenario. It's not going to work 100% of the time. You're probably going to do releases differently. You're going to this is ideal scenario where you would go like this. But in a lot of cases, you're still going to do a Scrum option and do a release at the end of the sprint or whatever depends on.
And you release that you deploy to production as soon as possible. You do out testing, you do assurance, and everything is there. But actual release, when customer can access it, and he has follow-up activities that that all of them. It's not just dev and ops. It's like marketing, product marketing. It's sales, pre-sales. Everybody who's doing working on your product rather than just development, they also communicate. So.
Yeah. Okay. But that's why with these cross-functional teams, there's actually nothing stopping you from having the salesperson in the team working.
Sales organization. It's not the salesperson. For me, for instance, if I want to release the feature, I need to inform, like more than development. Like you need to inform them that this is also you have to do the pricing. What is the price of your feature product? You include it in your previous pricing. There are, deployment, the deployment, yes, release, maybe like way we define it is like deploy as soon as possible, but release at the point where you can deliver value to a customer.
That's absolutely right, because the accent and stress is on the value of the customer. So value for my customer is different to the value from your customer. And it all is about this group of collective people defining what the value to the customer is and how is it that we package it together and deliver it at the best rate. So for my customer, it may be value that I'm as fast as possible. For your customer, it may be value that you have a very diligent marketing strategy followed with the release of the new product, etc. The same customer may do differently at the time when the product is already out there and you need to build up on it. So they will not want to follow up with a marketing campaign, but we want to...
Feature is, as I said.
Let's put it like this. So you come to the office on Monday morning and your competition just released a new feature, shiny new feature. You have 100 customers, you have 1,000 customers for say. And on Tuesday morning, you find out that 100 of your customers already canceled the subscription and signed up to a competition because they have this new feature. Do you want to wait for a month to deliver similar thing?
No, well, it's a different, it's a different setup where we work. It's business, so it's kind of difficult to just sign off and switch and then you need to integrate again. But depends on the feature.
Absolutely, it depends on the situation.
If it's something you really need to go.
Well, I'm glad this triggered some
Feature
discussion.
Split to separate. So you could use feature flags to separate delivery of software and releasing features to end users.
Yeah. Well, that's all. We give you a couple of minutes back of your life. And if there are more enthusiasts about DevOps, you've got to know how to have a session